So I've got some pretty amazing stats from the 2018 Global Digital Report by We Are Social, so probably anyone that pays attention to social is aware of their work. So remember that there's 7 billion people in the world. 4 billion are on the internet, so it's pretty extraordinary when you think about that includes kids and old people. I guess old people are on the internet a lot as well. But out of that 4 billion, 3.2 billion are active social media users and 5 billion are using mobile phone as well. So it's clearly social media has got saturation. I read some stats that kind of 8 in 10 people are on social media, but I think in this room it would be like 11 out of 10 people would be on social media. So it's a really dense topic. I'm going to race through a whole lot of stuff, and we've got some incredible experts here. But if there's things that you miss or you want to go over, come and talk to these guys later, and also do the General Assembly marketing course. It's pretty amazing. So maybe we start with you, Tom. So Tom is the head lecturer at General Assembly. I did the digital marketing course this year and I passed. So that's why Tom is here. Yeah. Tom is also one of the partners at LawPath, so he really has real life application, which is why I love General Assembly courses, because it's people that are actually working in the industry, and it's all about connecting legal services with providers. So if you ever need a lawyer, go on to LawPath, but if you need a digital marketer, let's talk to Tom Willis. Please come through. We'll get you on the middle. Thanks. Now, Sammy Preston and I have a long history. Sam and I used to work together, and she was a big part of all of our content marketing strategy, but she's gone on to huge things, bigger and better things. So she's been the lifestyle editor at Foxtel for their online content, and now is the new Sydney editor for the Urban List, which is, I mean, we'll get Sam to tell us, but it's a huge platform. It's kind of one of the biggest cultural platforms between Sydney, Australia and New Zealand. So please welcome Sammy Preston to the stage. Get you nice and high. And then my dear friend and a pretty impressive, powerful woman. So Louise Edmonds has had an incredible career with TV producing, journalism, styling, and got an incredible blog, MenStylePower, which is all about kind of empowering men through great dressing, but also character and gentleman behaviours, which I really love. So it's not just about the visual, it's really about the content of the heart. So please welcome influencer Louise Edmonds. Thank you. So hopefully we're all in shot. Cassandra, so we've got a little live stream going here, so no one's allowed to heckle until the end, please. So if anyone is involved in marketing, they know it's remiss to you can't really just start and kind of jump into a campaign. So I really want to do a quick race around Marketing 101. And I'm going to start with you first, Tom. Can you just tell us about an objective first framework when we approach marketing?
Yeah, sure. So an objective first framework is basically a framework that aligns anything that you're doing in marketing, in business really as a whole, with some kind of outcome that you're looking to drive. And so it's the idea of starting with what your objective and what you're looking to get out of something, which might be, looking to drive more revenue, to bring in more customers, to get more subscribers, and then working your way then into breaking down how does that look in terms of being successful, what are the driving KPIs you need to meet to be able to reach that target. Then moving on to designing tactics to allow you to hit those KPIs, measuring and optimizing from there. But it's really that idea of keeping you honest about whatever you're looking to do, and saying, we're going to start with saying, what's the outcome we're looking to drive here? What are we actually trying to get out of these marketing initiatives that we run? And then work our way into building the tactics from there.
So I know you're here to learn the tactics, but it's really important to actually take that step back and have a think about what the outcomes are. Part of that is your audience. So Louise, can you talk us through the idea of audience and maybe some personas for your brand, MenStylePower?
Sure. So I love all of the KPIs and meet those targets. But when I started in 2008, it was because I was working for the largest youth retailer in Australia. And what I noticed was a very tipped scale towards women's wear and like nothing for men. And a lot of the men that I was speaking to wouldn't be caught dead with a GQ under their arm, walking down the street. So I was thinking there is a market here, there's a gap in the market for gentlemen who perhaps they're dads or they've just started. So you specifically look at the audience that you want to target. I'm a twin to a male. So I have just a deep affection for men being able to do well in life, and half the time, you know, what their dad should teach them doesn't get passed down, and so they're kind of like going through life a little bit, you know, putting on the bravado, but they're not actually getting the real tools and resources to do life well. So I had a heart for that, and so when I built the site in 2008, the target was to be able to attract men by great clothes, making them feel confident and strong. But the key thing was also to be able to teach them about the ugly lure of pornography, pillow talk, intimacy, relationship skills, how to do life well, how to save, their finances, things that were key to them feeling that sense of masculinity and succeeding in life. So that's how I kind of formed the website. But the key thing about persona was I was a female. Were guys going to listen to me? Although I thought I had something to say. So I created an alias for 3 years. So the alias was Stig of Style, because I love cars, and I love Top Gear. And the second thing was the Stylemeister. So I was writing these 2 blogs, Stig of Style and Stylemeister, to actually connect into this group of guys, thinking it was a male writer. It was a female writer. I'm sorry, I've blown my cover. I've never said that to anyone before. I do, I need a helmet. I need a helmet on. But it proved successful. So, yeah, and then I revealed my identity when a new section of this influencer world came to pass, which was influencer management. Said, well, we've got this great website. I was headhunted, and all of a sudden they said, so you're Stig of Style? I said, yeah, I am. Don't you think it's great? They went, no, our brands don't think that's authentic. You're kind of lying, really. So I was never picked up from a group too. But I ended up doing all of my own campaigning, all my own branding, all the own revenue streams for the website, so it's worked out fine anyway.
And it's a good place to look at personas is HubSpot, which Tom has taught me in the class. So there's some really good workshops to have a look at who are your target audience, because for Louise, obviously it's male, but then it's sort of siloing down into that. So Sam, we talked a lot about owned paid and earned media. Can you talk us through that as a 101?
Sure. So your owned channels are generally the things that you kind of own and have complete control over. So for example, for us, for the Urban List, it's our website. Your earned channels are your social media audience, your Facebook page, your Instagram, and then your paid channels are any strategies that you might use where you are actually putting money behind it. I think the traditional sense is it's your Google advertising and that sort of thing. Yeah.
And then even to stick with that idea with the hub and spoke, when we were looking at kind of our website for the office space, it was the idea that all of the social media was almost all paths lead to Rome. They all had to come back to the website. So is that how the Urban List operates?
I'll throw a spanner in the works.
Go for it.
Like change the analogy a little bit. So I guess what's changed with social media, at least from a publisher's perspective, is that the algorithm changed with Facebook. If anyone is in publishing out there, you know what I'm talking about. But you can't, I think, relying on a third party to kind of deliver traffic back to a hub or your main website is no longer viable because Facebook is doing what it wants to do. So I think for us to change the analogy, it's more about the hub being your brand and using social media as a way to kind of raise awareness and actions around your brand, not necessarily driving traffic back to a central point. So I think what I mean by that is being channel agnostic, so using Facebook as Facebook, so creating content for Facebook, not creating content that will drive traffic from Facebook somewhere else, if that makes sense. So, and that's certainly something that the Urban List is invested in at the moment and moving forward.
And that's what you call native content. It's written for the purpose.
Native content, I think, is more to do with when we're working with brands and we're creating content for them that can sit in our website natively, but is actually paid for. But yeah, I think it's just more about meeting your audience where they are. So instead of trying to scoop them back to theurbanlist.com, we're actually creating content that's sitting on Facebook and that's meeting our Facebook audience there and not asking them to go somewhere else.
I'm going to come back to what the Urban List has done in light of at the start of the year, Mark Zuckerberg made an announcement about changing algorithms and content. So first we'll pull back a little bit and just, Tom, we'll look at Facebook as a platform. It easily holds a majority. It's got 2.2 billion active users and 95% of social media users on the platform. It gets a reputation, I've said, for being a space for middle-aged mothers, but is it a legitimate tool for business advertising?
Yeah, it most certainly is. And I've been using Facebook advertising probably since 2009, 2010. And I think one of the big things that you see with social media advertising, particularly with Facebook, is that because they've been around for so long in comparison to other advertising networks that exist, they've had so many more years to develop up the inventory that they can provide to advertisers to then be able to show ads to different times, the targeting sets that they have. There's statistics that go around that say 68% of Australians are on Facebook. It's something like 88% of them consume that through their mobile phone as part of that as well. So I think a lot of the time we think, oh, well, Facebook, it's only going to be for a certain target demographic. It's only going to be business to consumer. But the reality is when you've got so many people on the platform with so many different targeting opportunities, it's something that can cater for really any kind of business. For instance, my business, LawPath, we work very much in the business-to-business space. Everyone would tell you that LinkedIn is the place to go for business-to-business advertising, but when it comes down to it, when you break it down into what Facebook can offer, the costs of the actual ad spend, the targeting capabilities, the ability to be able to target people based on their job title, their industry, there's actually some great potential that then exists as a B2B. And so you'll generally find, because of these two reasons, the fact that there's so many people on there, the fact that the inventory, it's so diverse as well. It's not just being able to send somebody to your website. You can pop up contact forms, you can start conversations with people through the ads. There's such a diverse range of inventory there, plus its ability to really be cost effective, that really makes it a viable option for anyone who's looking to do any kind of paid advertising.
And I think that's what's really exciting about Facebook is unlocking the potential, because you can get so granular as far as, I'm sure everyone's dabbled with the audience, where you can sort of use geography and also then interest, but you can really get kind of freakishly,
Yeah.
What were some of the things you were telling us in the course about how stalkerish Facebook can get?
Yeah, it's changed a little bit since 2018, July 2018 of this year, where they've pushed back a little bit. There used to be a lot more of the ability to target people, really. You could have audiences as small as 20 people that you could just target with a single ad, and there's great case studies of people pranking their college roommates with kind of showing everywhere that they've been and saying, I know what you ate for dinner last night, David, and kind of showing them different ads around that. It's stepped back a little bit from that, where that most of the audiences now lead to be at least 1,000 people, but you still have so much power being able to cross-reference geolocations to people who have then visited your site, for then people who have a propensity to like and behave in different ways as well. So the targeting is pretty amazing. Yeah.
And so again, the intent for today is a broad brush sweep, but definitely look at some of the General Assembly. They do really short courses. I get no money for endorsing this. I just loved the courses so much. But it's quite complex to kind of drill into these things. So Sam, we'll come back to that idea where I was saying Mark Zuckerberg announced that they were going to have less of that advertising, because Facebook makes $40 billion a year on their advertising alone. And so they're going to feature more local content. So again, a lot of content publishers were really worried, was the carpet being pulled out from under you? How are you going to reach? But how's Urban List pivoted for that?
I think, as I was saying, even before I was there was always a strategy to not rely on third parties to build our audience. So I think at the moment our audience is like 2.5 million uniques a month, so it's pretty big. But it's, for us, the strategy has always been around diversifying our streams, like how we get people to come to our channels or to our site. So for us, I think there's a focus on our EDM strategy. So sign up to our newsletters. They're really great. But yeah, and I think, as I was saying, for us, I think the metrics need to shift for publishing away from this is how big our audience is and more around this is how engaged our audience is. And that's something that's a huge focus for us right now.
And maybe, Lou, we'll talk about that, because we talk about the micro-influencers and the micro moment, because people are often 3 seconds are looking through really quickly. So for you, where do you kind of determine the value? And I'm interested in the metrics around an influencer. Can we ask how they pay and kind of how they work it out? Is it by numbers or engagement?
Yeah, of course. So MenStylePower is a publishing site, so it operates and behaves very similar to the Urban List. So there's lots of online advertising to actually purchase for certain campaigns, for certain durations and for certain costs. So when it comes to influencers though, that's a completely different kettle of fish. So basically people are looking at paying for, okay, let's call out the Kardashians, we've got to talk about it in this conversation. You know, having something endorsed by the Kardashians is something that they go, we are going to access tens of millions of people to be able to drive revenue from them endorsing it, you know, across to our website. So 2 things come to mind there. First, influencers starting out today is a lot harder than what it was maybe 5 years ago. And the reason why is because the market is incredibly saturated. And there's also a certain behaviour. I love the metrics and I love all of the jargon that we talk about when it comes to more technical side of being online. And the second thing that we cannot dismiss, and we can't pull this very clever veil of, you know, all of these metrics over the face of we're people. We're built for emotion. We are built for relationship. So if you have something that is incredibly authentic to you, and you are so convicted and people can see the conviction in what you're talking about, what you're advocating, what you're endorsing, then that's when you're going to get this niche following of people just coming back to you over and over again because they like you. You're kind. You've got something great to say. You're positive. Or even with Diet Prada, who, I don't know, does anyone know Diet Prada in the room? So they pull apart the copycats in fashion, right? And they've been around for a long time. So they're followed by millions of people because they're so authentic with their tone of voice on their websites. So they've got this niche market. So I guess the one thing about costs is many people love to come into the influencer space. They look great, they've got great clothes, they hardly ever buy them, they're loaned. So it's not stuff that's in their wardrobe where that's what it used to be 10 years ago. In the States in particular, I'm just sort of segue for a minute, a 13-year-old had this crazy wardrobe that she bought from op shops. And she would blog and she had millions of people following her. And because it was authentic, it was something that was completely ornate to her. Where today we've got a lot of copycats. No disrespect, I believe everyone should have the opportunity to go out and to try things, to test, because they will eventually get to their authentic place. They may go over a few humps and fall down, and if you get back up again, that's the main thing, right? And find your place in the world, find your voice in the world.
And we saw, I think it was last month, Kylie Jenner became a billionaire, I think one of the youngest ever billionaires off her platform. And yet people like her older sister Kim, half sister, haven't been able to monetize. Are things changing? And I don't know if you saw in Sydney Morning Herald, it was the idea that some brands aren't engaging with influencers because they're finding there's no return on investment.
That's
so
right.
Kind of what's your comment? Are things working?
So from blogging, blog means better leverage on Google. Blog was an opinion piece.
True? That's what
was an opinion piece that you. Yeah, this is 10 years ago. So, so it was an opinion piece that you had next to something where you sold things off your website. So that gave you the SEO to sort of draw people in, and then all of a sudden they went, oh, you sell a really cool T-shirt. Yeah, that's great. I'll buy one of those, or I'll find you somewhere to buy one of those. And then it moved to, obviously, business. The middleman comes in, so all of a sudden you had affiliate marketing. So you couldn't actually go direct to brand. You actually had to go through these affiliates, so you got a commission if you sold something. Now, any client that wants to engage an influencer to actually spruik their product does want return on investment, which is sales. but a lot of the time the influencer is a branding mechanism. So they're like endorsing it, they're like an ambassador. And selling those pieces is a harder job for an influencer to do. Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong, I'm happy for any people to sort of go, no, I've got a great example, this person sort of sells stuff really well. But that's key to what's happening. So I guess that, again, you know, everything's shift, and then we've got management for influencers, and then we've got influencers that are turned into stars, and then it's kind of turned into this
celebrities.
They're celebrities now, so it's
and
moved again.
If we look, Sam, at Urban List, I'm just interested as well with the economics behind it, because you're producing content. It's essentially a content marketing strategy, but then there's the native kind of advertising. How does advertising come into the equation?
So we actually have a full branded content team that work with brands regularly. I'm not in that team. So I only work on organic content, which I think is kind of a nice thing. When I've worked with Foxtel and with previous publishers, there's always been a mix between editorial or organic working with brands at the same time. So we do have a dedicated team that works with brands, but the way that it works for us, which is quite special as well, is we're only ever working with brands or companies that actually fit in with the Urban List. So we'll never be endorsing an oil company or anything super random like that. Like, I think one of the cool things about what we do is our branded content actually looks and feels like something that we would otherwise write about. So yeah, we've got some great campaigns that are running at the moment, and an amazing team that's just like all over it all the time.
Tell us about your team. What's the age, kind of average age? Are they all millennials?
They're millennials. I think our branded content manager is amazing, and I'm pretty sure she's on the DL25, and she's a boss. So I think it's kind of special, and I think it's something that other publishers maybe struggle to kind of achieve, and it's certainly something that coming into the Urban List I've been impressed by.
And tell us, there's some big competitors, Time Out, Broadsheet, Concrete Playground. What do you guys do differently, you think, when you look at the mix?
I think the thing that's probably, I started working with Broadsheet and I love what they do, and I met so many amazing people and learnt so many awesome things when I was there. I think the difference is probably mostly in our voice. We're more your best mate telling you about an awesome restaurant to go to, not necessarily I think still kind of fitting into that. It's like your friend that knows all of the cool restaurants, so you ask them, like, where do I need to try this month? So I think that's probably the difference with us.
Yeah, interesting. Now I'm going to throw it out to the audience. What do you think is the second most popular platform? If Facebook is the first? Anyone else?
Something from China.
No, it's actually YouTube is with 1.5 billion users. It's the second most popular platform. So, Tom, what can you tell us about kind of YouTube marketing and how people are starting to use that for business, not just for watching cat videos?
Yeah, YouTube serves itself as a fantastic platform for generating content, and I think where YouTube really stands in strength is it plays in, it's also the second biggest search engine. It's not only the second biggest social media platform. So you have a lot of people who are looking for, tons of content at any given point. And so it gives you the ability for your content to be found and be another acquisition channel through developing content that's really reaching out to people. And so that's content that then aligns with what you're doing and can be translated into multiple forms as well. What I really love about doing content on YouTube is that content on YouTube very well translates itself into doing something on Facebook for video. You could potentially turn it into tidbits on your Instagram page. You could develop transcripts to then exist on your blog as well. So it serves multiple purposes in having that ability through. And it just gives you that ability to really, put a face behind your brand if you're a small business, and be able to talk to people in that one-on-one and really connect with them. So, I mean, I'll give you an example. So I did some of my own kind of YouTube building the other year, and I didn't have any kind of audience to begin with. And I said, all right, I'm going to wake up every morning and I'm going to create a YouTube video every day. And I'm going to do this for the rest of the year. So I lasted about, 10 days. Getting up at 5 a.m. was tough. And it was a really interesting experience for me because I created 10 videos for 10 days. 9 of them got 100 views, 150 views. One of them got 41,000 views. And so I realized from there that it's a platform where if you're starting to put out a lot of content and you're doing content connecting with what people are looking for, it's engaging, it's interactive. I was getting all these people contacting me on my personal email, asking questions about what I was creating. And so as an acquisition tool, I think it can be a really, really powerful one, particularly as an educator or someone who's really looking to help somebody out.
And what did you have sitting around that video? Were you using hashtags and kind of extra digital strategies?
Yeah. So it was very heavily built into keyword research around what people were looking for. So very free tool that everyone can use, keywordtool.io. You can go in there, chuck in what your topic is, and it will show you all of the auto-completed searches that YouTube is pulling in, and that tells you really what people are looking for. And a very simple strategy is you can just take that list of keywords, literally dump them in the bottom of your video, and it actually helps you to rate for like-minded keywords around what it is that you're associating with. So it was about having really attractive thumbnails and just creating content that people were engaged with. So, one of the big things in YouTube is not only the amount of views you get, but how engaged the people are in those views and what percentage of your video do they actually go through and complete as well. So that plays into the authenticity point as well. Yeah.
And Louise, your background is in moving image in TV production. So these are kind of often on the fly, like Instagram stories. How are you seeing these are being used and how do you take advantage of these different tools?
Oh, I love them because, to be honest, at the end of the day, when you've worked all day, you just want to kick back and watch video, right, with a whiskey. Like, you don't want to be reading massive, paragraphs of content. You want to be able to it's a leisure. Time, I think, is the number one key leisure item in the world because you never get it back and you hardly find it, right? Because, time is just so scarce these days. So video, I think, is so key. I started editing, so my background is a producer and editor, and I currently produce television as well as running MenStylePower, which is like a 10-year-old son, because really if you want to invest time, it's like every morning you have to get up and do something passionate. Like 10 days was good, my friend, but you really gave it a good go there. But when it comes to video, it is so integral to your social media strategy today. Like, you cannot leave it out. But the beauty of it, though, is, many years ago, everything had to be very studio-based, very high-res because it was going on television. Now, technology has given us this extraordinary piece of equipment where we can shoot the most stunning pictures and videos, and it's got an sort of movement capacity, and it's just like, it's so user-friendly, it's gorgeous. And then you can just download that into iMovie on your phone. You've created something magnificent. People will watch that. But the thing is, you need personality, you need a story, and you need something that really does engage people. Yeah. And that again comes back to your authenticity. Who are you? Your very first comments were about what's the marketing objective? What's your agenda to being an influencer? Yeah. What do you have to say to the world that's perhaps not already out there? What angle do you have that you are so convicted in that you can continue to talk about it over and over and over again? And I think that's the key, and it gets replicated in what you say, the pictures you take, and the videos that you create.
Now I want to jump across to Sam with content, because in the same way you can use keyword research to find not just writing great articles, it's like content writing has become humanities and science put together. So how do you approach content writing? Do you use Ask the Reader and those sorts of online tools?
We do have an SEO strategy. So we publish a certain number of, SEO-centred articles a month, which are about boosting our organic traffic. So the idea, I think it's kind of based off what I would call a long tail search strategy. So not necessarily keywords, but actually long tail search phrases. And I think things that are kind of native, for want of a better word, sorry to confuse anyone, native to the urban list. So Sydney's best ramen, for example. We will be constantly updating the content that we have. So if you search ramen and you're in Sydney, it's likely that the Urban List article will come up for you. So that's kind of how we approach it. And I've not heard of the site that you mentioned, but there's one that I love called Answer the People. I think it's answerthepeople.com. Do you know that one? It's got this freaky guy with a beard on it. It's like some agency guy, and you like type in.
Jeeves from
But basically you put a search term in, so ramen, to follow that one on, and it basically gives you within a geolocation a bunch of search queries around different pronouns, different phrases in this crazy graph. So that's that's certainly something that I learned as well working with Foxtel. We did a lot of work with SEO agencies, and they were kind of pushing us towards long tail phrases. And
Tom, can you explain long tail?
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, sure. So if you look at the kind of the space that is search, there's something like 60, 70,000 searches that conduct on Google every second. And so you can imagine over the space of a year, that's 3 trillion odd searches that are being conducted over on Google. Of those searches that take place, you've got roughly about 18% of searches that are very kind of short searches. So somebody looking for mechanic or writing in dog or Sydney, very, very short types of searches. They get a lot of hits, those searches, but they mean lots of different things to lots of different people. And they're very, very competitive if you're ever trying to kind of rank organically for these words. And so as you break that search down, you add a few additional words. So I say something like boat mechanic Sydney instead of mechanic. It's a more qualified search. There's less competition, probably less volume. Between those two, your mechanics and your boat mechanic Sydney searches, your kind of short to middle tail searches, you've got about 30% of all searches that get conducted on the web. And then you've got this 70% abyss known as the long tail of search, where all kinds of searches take place. And that might be, who is the best boat mechanic in Sydney for helping me out with my Yamaha because I've broken my windscreen. And these big areas of search, you think about them and you say, well, that's a long search. Not a lot of people are going to be searching it. But hey, if I help Yamaha boats that have broken windscreens, I want that person coming to my site. That's probably more relevant to me than someone just looking for a mechanic. So the companies that do very well from a long tail perspective are the ones willing to put in, roll up the sleeves and put in the work to think about what users are looking for. And they might not be things that people search for thousands of times a month. They might only get 10, 20 searches a month. But if you create a piece of content that gets you an additional 10 hits a month, that's going to be 10 hits a month this month, next month. You layer that atop time and time again, and you're building yourself into a position where then you've got, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of hits coming from long qualified searches. So it's a very resource-heavy kind of content strategy to do. But if you're wanting pretty much a guaranteed way to be able to do well, and if you're answering those questions that the long tail is asking very well, then you're going to have some really strong results.
Now, the main thing is also engaging content. So I'm going to ask each of you quickly your tip to create really engaging content. So again, whether it's visual, my tip would be using emojis in subject lines is actually really good. It worked this month. And to ask questions when you're doing headlines and things, often it's better than just delivering the content. So what would be your tip, I guess, in your sphere, maybe in Instagram?
Well, Instagram and the main website. So the main website, the highest hit article that we've ever written was called The Ugly Lure of Porn. And to me it was like, obviously porn, typing into Google, is going to have an SEO feed that pulls it into. So then Google did Project Penguin, which basically was black hat SEOs that kind of wiped it all out. So that page was literally being threatened to be taken down. I'm like, but I'm actually helping. I'm not actually like a porn site. But it's just because there was a necessity to clean up the web. Yeah. So for the website, I think the long tail headlines is actually the headlines that we use to sort of gain traction with people searching. For Instagram, it has to be a pretty picture. People don't necessarily read what you're saying. We have been Google-fied, I'm sorry to say, but we want things sharper and quicker these days. So instead of doing something that's very long form, it has to be something that's really succinct and precise. So if you've got a sense of humour, this is the best place for you, because if you can rock out a one-liner and people have a little giggle, people will actually start following you. So on the long form, you've got to do something that's got a great headline on Instagram or social, that you've got to have a great composition.
Or a puppy picture. Tom.
And man in a suit with a puppy.
With a puppy.
Having a latte. Yes.
I would say very simply is breaking your content apart into where it's a lot more consumable for someone who's skimming your content. You know, we live in an attention economy these days where the most important thing is a user's attention, and that's something that is a very finite resource. You want to make it as easy as possible for your user to be able to get out of what they're wanting as soon as they can, get the result that they're looking for. So using subheadings, breaking things apart, using visual mediums is a way of being able to break that apart as well. But make sure you're not just doing big, long paragraphs of content. Break it down into subheadings, make it very easily consumable for the user.
I think I agree with Louise and Tom, but maybe to add to both of those points, making something actionable. And then I think Jonah Peretti from BuzzFeed always says that something that hits home with somebody in a kind of the way they see themselves or how they reflect on themselves. So if you think about BuzzFeed content, it always speaks to you're from this minute area of the world, so you know all about this and this relates to you. And I think that's really that kind of emotion of belonging, I think is the right word, makes content really resonate with people, and then they share it. Yeah.
And it's interesting, with a lot of small business, we have our niche, and I think it's if we know our persona and we also know how to actually use these tools, then we can create the content. It's not like we are a big Coca-Cola necessarily trying to master kind of the whole industry. But I do want to do a case study on that note, and just really quickly before we throw open to questions, I want your tips of how you would approach it if you did have a large soft drink company looking to outsell its competitors in Sydney. What is your kind of one approach that you would take?
You can start.
I would come at things. I'm probably more on the advertising side of things of where I would come from, and the easiest way of being able to outdo your competitors is to target the people who like the competitors with, quite a challenging and confronting message. And if you're a competitor brand, generally you've got to call out that competitor as part of what you're doing as well. So you'd want to think of a way that you can really look to debunk them in what you're doing, targeting them as an interest on Facebook, probably doing some short videos that are looping very quickly, easily consumable. Facebook loves to be able to pick up that content and take it in as well. That would be kind of my, starting approach.
And there's an awesome example of BMW and Audi kind of having a play-off with billboards. So you can even Google that. We covered it earlier in the year with one of our brand themes. Sam, what would you do for a big soft drink company?
I think...
Even though you wouldn't work for them out of integrity.
Maybe. I don't know. Depends. I think...
Yeah, I think you are actually.
No, we're not. I don't think so.
No.
I think what Tom said is spot on. So interest-based targeting and kind of you can do that through social media. I think the only thing I would maybe add to that, if I guess with soft drink the target audience is like 25 and under, probably doing something really visual around that, and some kind of video, whether that kind of carried on from a TVC into social media, so there was all these connection points and people kind of constantly being flooded with this idea and this concept. And so when they go to Coles and they see the orange Coke that just came out, who drinks that? So I think,
Can I? I wouldn't. If they throw lots of money at me, I actually wouldn't do it, because I don't believe in sugary drinks to be endorsing through MenStylePower to give to the next generation. So I would say no. But I am about to do something with a bank, and it's a very competitive space in finance, and they're all we're the best and do this and show off the credit cards, a travel card, and it's got great. And I just went, I actually don't want to do any of that. And I said, I don't care if I lose the account, but but this is what I want to do. I want to teach young people how to handle money, because it's not taught in schools. No one has education on it in primary schools. We need to teach our babies how to handle respect and see that they can control money and money doesn't control them. I want to see the babies out of debt. So I pitched another idea to them and they loved it. So watch MenStylePower coming to you soon will be just for the creative content and being able to speak back to a client and go, what do you think of this idea? And here are the reasons why I want to do it. And if you don't like it, then you can, and I'm being very direct with you. I don't speak like that to the client. It's more eloquent. But it's that thing, because I can't endorse something that I don't feel in my heart is actually going to harm people.
We haven't done, a lot of what we've talked about is business to consumer, but let's have a little look at business to business. So LinkedIn is the second biggest platform behind Facebook again for business to business. If you have a small accounting firm that needs to get 5 new clients on the books for the next 3 months, Tom, how would you approach maybe using LinkedIn or maybe using Facebook?
Yeah, let's just say we were using LinkedIn just for something a little bit different. So I think one of the things that you would really look to do, look, most people when they think of accounting, they're not overly excited about the concept of hearing from an accounting firm all the time. So you've really got to break it into parts and kind of build out a little bit of a mind map of what the accountant can really, talk to people in something that's going to relate to them, whether that's to do with BAS or tax returns or something to do with research and development, capital raising, whatever that might be. Find the common concepts of what it is that you specialize in, and then you'd be looking to build out content that then you could look to service to that audience. And you could probably, best way of doing that is through those LinkedIn articles, LinkedIn posts, and that gives you the ability to be able to create content in a way that then is very pushed to the network that you have attached to you as well. So they would get a notification, they would be aware of that content that you're creating. So I would play it very much as a thought leadership piece, as a way of really looking to push that. And then you'd really look to tie in that thought leadership with some kind of hook at the end, whether that's to sign up to an ebook that we've written that's got all of the 5 things you need to know about this certain area, get them onto like a webinar series or whatnot, a free consultation, a way of being able to tie that in. Particularly when you're looking at B2B, you can't go in for the hard sell straight away. It's got to be something where you're really looking to build up through, relationship building, that thought leadership piece before actually being able to go in for the kill.
And you need to give something to kind of get something
Yeah.
as well. Can I just ask you quickly about advertising? It's a lot more expensive compared to Facebook or LinkedIn. Do you use that much?
Look, I've done bits and pieces with it. I've never really been able to make it work, to make it say, yes, I'd rather do that over Facebook. Yeah. When you're comparing what will usually cost you $5 per click on an ad on LinkedIn versus, usually looking at $1.20, $1.30 on Facebook, I think that, getting 4 or 5 more people to click on Facebook is generally going to find you the better audience than trying to get those small ones on LinkedIn. I'll keep trying and seeing if that's going to change, but at the moment, especially when starting out, I'd look at Facebook first. Yeah.
Sammy, accounting firm, B2B, how would you approach?
Not technically. I mean, I don't want to, I think I'm going to try and say something different to what you said, Tom, because that sounded like it would probably work. Not technically social media, but I feel like database and EDM strategies are a great way to speak to people if you are kind of pushing into that content marketing realm, building up a database of potential clients or just people that are interested, and then kind of feeding information to them and reminding them that you're there and that your services fit into this space is perhaps another way of attacking that one.
How many on the Urban List database?
Sydney, I think. So we have sites in Sydney, Melbourne, Perth, Gold Coast, Auckland, Sunshine Coast, and I feel like I've forgotten one. But Sydney alone, I think, is about 50,000. I'm looking at Jess, my deputy.
And then how regularly are your EDMs going out?
For Sydney, ours go out Monday, Wednesday and Friday. And if there's any breaking news in between that, we'll always push that at a relevant time as well.
So that's an interesting point. There's a real nurture because you have acquired this audience and then you're sort of looking after them and I guess progressing them. So that's sort of a great sales technique. What would you do?
So to promote accounting.
Yeah, B2B.
So, yeah.
If this accountant needs to get more clients, does he need to wear
Yeah.
a nice suit and take some good pictures? What would
It's
you
really
do?
corny. No, I wouldn't do that. I think what I do, understanding the audience, if I had an accountant going, I'd really love these people to come on board, then I'd do like a web series and place it on Udemy. So people can go there for a small fee and basically run through a whole lot of checklists. And it would have to be for people who are entrepreneurs and people who need an accountant in that space, because as a blogger, as an influencer, or someone that's on social media, there's a whole lot of tax deductible elements that they may not actually be realising that they can put towards their tax. So it's something along that. It has to be education, it has to be stylish, of course, and it could be something that's a little bit sort of like cheeky in the sense of being a bit fashionable or a bit blonde, excuse me, I don't actually do blonde jokes, but you could do something that grabs attention and then you actually outlay the areas that people may not necessarily know about, and you're tagging this person in. And of course, with video content, you can bring on beautiful lower thirds and constantly drive the call to action to this particular accountant. So it can be done really stylishly.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Udemy, I haven't heard of that.
So it's like Udemy, it's like an online university, and you can basically just log in, you can do your own little web series, and you can charge it for, say, $5 to jump online and get 12 videos. But it's global, and they do their own marketing. And I think Seth Godin, who is the marketing genius of the world, Purple Cow, is one of his fantastic books. Just to give you the idea of what he sort of rakes in, he'll do a 3-hour marketing course on Udemy. He's just literally sitting there on a chair and just talking about strategies, and he's literally made $3 million from, a 3 million course. So it's a great asset. And the other thing is it's catering to how we are interacting with social media and the internet today. So end of the day, if we want to do a course, it's short, it's sharp, you're getting the best, like masterclass.com. Who's heard of masterclass.com? Sensational, absolutely incredible. Like $80 to watch the best of the best go through a whole process of how they started to how they finished to give you these tips and tricks of their trade. It's absolutely phenomenal. So yeah, there's great assets out there.
Well, I'm going to throw it out to the audience. If you have a business that you want the Brains Trust to try and, you can either ask a general question or you can pose like a hypothetical, but it could be your business. So otherwise I'll throw another question. Did anyone want to ask anything?
Don't be shy. Don't be shy.
I will.
I'm glad, Sam, because I was going to ask it for you.
Well, we have 3 amazing brains and 3 advice. That's great value. So I'm organising an event overseas for corporate professionals who suffer from sitting all day, poor diet, so absorbed by their work that they neglect most areas of their life. I'm in the corporate world myself, and I've seen that around me. So I'm organising a wellness event, if you like, for those people to take their families. So it's a bit of a holiday, as well as a mingle with leading global experts in the areas of health, microbiome, love and intimacy, family and parenting, work performance, artificial intelligence.
So how do we
Can I
promote
come
it?
with you?
Yeah.
When is this on? Can I?
So it's a holistic look
great, yeah.
at
Well
a
done.
person, because most people at any one point in their life will flock to one and neglect the others. They don't really live a holistic life in each one of those areas throughout their life.
So can you promote this amazing conference? What would be your approach? So a one-off business conference, international speakers, what would be your approach to try and, in January?
Yes. First 2 weeks in January, that's when most corporate people are off.
Yeah.
work,
So how would you reach the corporate audience? Maybe Tom, can we start in the middle again?
Okay, sure. So I think I'll say one idea that I think would work very well is tying in articles that people read and trying to target people who are reading articles that then tie into what the conference is about. So people who are saying, things like, how do I spend less time sitting at my desk, and 5 exercises you can do when you're in the office or whatnot. And probably very simply, one of the great things you can do if you want to target things, and particularly for events these days, is content syndication. So what that allows you to do is, if you read an article these days, most publishers at the end of the article will put in like recommended stories, and you see these pop up, and there's usually 5 or 6 little tiles in there. So as an advertiser, you can actually target on them through syndication networks like Outbrain, Taboola, of the likes, and actually target topics that people are reading about and be able to put your ads actually then in there. And that's usually works very well when you're tying it to like an article that somebody can read. That then builds them in. So they hit the article, then you've got them on your site, gives you the ability to retarget to them, bring them into a database, et cetera, et cetera.
Sammy, what would you do to get people to the conference?
I think that there's an opportunity to borrow, if you like, the audience of your speakers. So perhaps there's a strategy in selecting speakers that have quite large social media audiences themselves and making, I guess, a shake hands with them that if they're coming to speak at this event or to run some portion of the event, that they will actually share content or help create content in the lead up to the event to promote it. So I think that's loosely called seeding, or kind of an influencer strategy as well. So yeah, just kind of leveraging or making content from what you've already got in your event, basically.
And seeding is worth researching more about, because Sam and I did a kind of like a 4-month project on seeding and just almost piggybacking using sort of how things go viral, people share and get shared on. So seeding's something worth investigating. What about you, Lou?
I do something really clever again by utilising influencers, but potentially bringing together your speakers and doing an umbrella, sort of like an overarching theme, health is the new wealth, because that's the absolute truth. And also speaking to, there's certain small businesses, boutique businesses that are stationed around metropolitan cities that are like performance clinics for CEOs, is reaching into that group of small businesses because they're established with a physio, a psychologist, a group personal trainer, etc. And what they do is they actually go into huge big enterprises that have this issue where women are time poor, they sit in boards, they sit down a lot, etc. And so they're shortening their life basically by not being able to get out and be active. So they help these people get into that sort of routine and target these guys. But I'd do something really clever about a small video sort of campaign where there's, say, 7 elements or 7 departments to talk about, and you string this together and you get influencers to sort of spruik this particular video, and you find that engagement actually works really well.
And I really love the point that Louise is making, that we have all of this digital, but ultimately it's also what's happening in the real world, so IRL, in real life. And I think as much as we are kind of on our device, we need to look up and also have events like this. This is an event where people can come together and there's social media that hangs off it, but making sure that social is not just online, but social is what we're doing here. So on that note, please thank my panel. They've been fantastic. So just reminded, so we'll be on the rooftop next month. I think it's going to be Friday the 27th, if I've got the date right, about architecture. But go out and be social and get off your phones and start talking to everyone. So thank you, everyone.